Strawberries are the crop I recommend every beginner grow if you want to grow fruit in an easy way. Very few fruit grow as easily as strawberries in so many different types of growing situations. When I first started gardening, I didn't have a raised bed, I didn't even have a house, I didn't have anything besides a pot. And you can grow strawberries perfectly in a pot. The only problem is right now, my strawberries aren't too far along for the season. So we're gonna head on over to North Carolina to visit Meg, who will show you exactly how to grow strawberries in containers from start to finish.
Containers will forever and always be my favorite vessels for growing most every kind of fruit, but especially strawberries. And you might be looking at me and saying, Meg, why? You have this large garden, you've got all these raised beds, you have all of this in-ground space. Why are you growing in containers? And apart from containers being perfect for the small space gardener, the patio gardener, even the balcony gardener. Actually, the first time I ever grew strawberries was when I lived in an apartment on my balcony. But apart from all of that, containers do have the perfect spot in larger gardens as well for these reasons. First of all, pest control is so much easier when you're growing strawberries in containers. Strawberries can also be little divas. Just like blueberries, they prefer their soil to be on the slightly more acidic side. So if you're growing in containers, it just makes it a lot easier to control the quality of the soil and the acidity of the soil. And then lastly, strawberries can be very invasive, and I had to learn this the hard way because I have 2 patches of strawberries in ground right now that I am still wrestling with. I'm trying to rip them out. I'm trying to get them all into containers. They propagate very easily, very well, and keeping them in containers just keeps them in check. Let's be honest here, size really does matter, especially when we're talking about our fruit. So we want to make sure that we're choosing the right variety of strawberry for us. And there are hundreds of different varieties, but they're kind of categorized into 3 main types and a secret 4th type. The first type is going to be called June-bearing strawberries. And these are going to give you 1 large crop in the summer, usually around June, as the name implies. And if size is your top priority here, you want to go for these because June-bearing strawberries are going to give you the biggest berries. Next, we have ever-bearing, and as this name implies, they are ever-bearing. So they're going to give you multiple harvests throughout the growing season, usually once in early summer, again in like late summer, and then sometimes if you're lucky in the fall as well. So this variety is great for a very consistent harvest. This is what I choose to grow, but you kind of have to sacrifice on the size a little bit. These are going to be a little bit smaller than your June bearing, but they're still a good medium size. And then we have day neutral, and this kind of gets clumped together with the ever bearing. Sometimes they are just labeled as ever-bearing because they kind of mean the same thing. They're still going to be ever-bearing. They're gonna produce as long as the temperatures remain tolerable, usually between 40 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're gonna be kind of the same size as ever-bearing, just a little bit smaller than your June-bearing. Our 4th secret type is called alpine strawberries, and these are really the only strawberries that are more commonly started from seed because they are a wild type of strawberry. So since they're wild, if size is really important to you, I wouldn't grow these because they are pretty small, but what they lack in size, they truly do make up for in flavor. Their flavor is incredible. It's very unique. They are gonna grow just like ever-bearing strawberries. They fruit all throughout the season and they come back every year. If you've ever spent any time strolling a garden center, this probably looks very familiar to you. Garden centers are chock full of these in March and April, and this is probably the easiest and quickest way to get started with strawberries in your garden. I think that this is really great for beginners because this thing is already established, it's ready to go, it's ready to start fruiting. This already is fruiting. If you want to save a little bit of money and you want to be introduced to a lot more variety, there's another route you can go, and it's called the bare root strawberry. And this is basically just the bare roots of your strawberry plant. So some cons to this is that it's going to take a little bit longer to establish in your garden. You're probably not going to get fruit the first year. It's probably going to happen in the second year, but you're saving money. If there's like a specific variety that you want or you need for your garden, it's probably available via bare root. So you just have to make the best decision for you. Finding the right variety really isn't going to mean much if we aren't finding the right container. And even though this guy seems happy in this small container, I mean, it's fruiting and everything, it's not going to be happy for the long term. It really needs a bigger space to spread its roots, and that's just going to give you better harvests and bigger berries over time. So when we are choosing a container, starting with plastic, I think plastic is a pretty solid option. It's lightweight, it retains moisture easily, it's really readily available. And if you have plastic in your garden, which you probably do, you are able to recycle it. I would say that you need at least 10 to 12 inches in depth and probably the same in width. This is actually a really great size container overall. Plastic also comes readily available in these hanging containers. You can actually just buy these from your garden center. They do really well. They have that nice depth to them. Another solid option is going to be grow bags, fabric grow bags. These are one of my favorite things to grow fruit in. Actually, I think I grow most of my fruit in my garden in these grow bags. They're lightweight, they're breathable, they're porous, they're well draining. They air prune the roots, which I think overall makes for a healthier plant. So they're really everything that you would want in a container. Then we also have terracotta. I'm excited about this one because I'm going to be planting strawberries in this one and putting it on my front porch. The pros with terracotta is that it's extremely aesthetic. The only thing with terracotta is that it's going to dry out extremely fast and you're going to have to water it really often. I'm going to have to water this every single day, probably here in North Carolina. Our sun is very brutal here. Another solid option is a wooden box, and this is really great for balcony gardeners. I actually grew strawberries for the very first time in my little wooden box that hung over my balcony, and this is great. They usually have proper planting depth, they're wide enough, they're usually really long. You just want to make sure with wooden boxes that they have the proper amount of drainage. Sometimes they come with no drainage, and strawberries do need drainage. Another solid option, and one that I am doing myself this year, is the green stalk, a grow tower, a vertical grow tower. And this is going to utilize that vertical space rather than horizontal space. So if you are a patio gardener or even a balcony gardener, you are able to grow an insane amount of strawberries in just a tiny little space. And this year I am ripping out all of my strawberries that are invading my garden in ground, and I'm putting them in a green stalk and seeing how that works for me this year. And so far, so good. If you want to plant in raised beds, that's another great option, but just beware that strawberries are very invasive and they could very likely try to take over the entire raised bed. So you'll really have to stay on top of your pruning if you go that route. When we're planting out our containers, we want to make sure that we're using a well-draining, nutrient-rich either potting mix or compost or a mix of both. What I'm doing here is I'm using just straight up compost because it'll retain moisture a little bit better than a potting mix. So when you're planting your strawberries, you don't want to bury them. You want to make sure that the crown is at the soil level. There we go. We've got it all planted out. I am very excited for this. Let's talk fertilizing, because just like plants need water and sun, they also need food. And especially potted plants, they kind of have limited resources in this tiny little environment that they're in. So we have to make sure that we are feeding them. I don't think that they need nutrition right now because I've just put them in some brand new compost. I think that that is enough to kind of get them going from the start. And usually if you're going with a potting soil or compost, it's going to be enough. But I do like to hit them kind of halfway through the growing season, especially because mine are ever-bearing. So they're going to continuously be pumping out fruit. I like to just hit them with something gentle. I really like Espalma's Fairy Tone. I really like Neptune's Harvest, the one that has more phosphorus in it than nitrogen, because once these are producing their berries, they need a little bit more phosphorus. Phosphorus is what keeps the berries coming. And I did actually find my soil acidifier, so I am going to go ahead and amend this really quick with some soil acidifier just to kind of bring that pH down to something that these berries are gonna like. So this says for potted plants about 1 tablespoon every 4-inch diameter. So I'm just gonna kind of lightly sprinkling this in the soil. I'm gonna mix it in. And as I'm watering, this should slowly start to kind of amend that soil and just bring that pH down to something that they enjoy. Staying on top of watering your containers is going to be very important. Unfortunately, it is just the name of the game with containers. They're gonna dry out a lot quicker than they would in ground or in a raised bed, just because there's way less volume there. I know that I'm probably gonna have to water this every day. Here in North Carolina, sun is very brutal. Fortunately, we do have lots of rainy days, so I won't have to water on those rainy days. But other than that, pretty much every day I'm gonna have to make a conscious effort to keep this watered. But there are some things that you can do to kind of take that watering load off a bit. You can plant in larger containers, like again, the plastic or the fabric grow bags. Those are gonna retain moisture a lot better. And one thing that I really love to do is to mulch. Mulch is really important because mulch is going to lay on top of the soil. It's gonna keep the soil nice and cool, especially on those hot days. And it's gonna keep that evaporation to a minimum. And I also do have one more little trick up my sleeve that I use with my other container plants that I will show you. This is kind of my little container orchard. You may recognize this plant from last year, the growing blueberries in containers. If you haven't seen that video, go and check it out. But a lot of people always ask me, why do you have wine bottles just sticking out of your plants in the garden? And what it's connected to is this little terracotta watering spike. This is called like an Oya. And terracotta is porous and it actually uses capillary action to water your plants over time. So I fill up any kind of glass with water and I stick it in there and it'll just kind of water the plant over time. And this just really, really helps. If I'm on vacation, especially, these are helpful. I'll kind of use a larger glass for that, but I highly recommend watering spikes, especially if you don't have irrigation set up. There's a few ways that you can get even more fruit, even bigger and better fruit from your strawberries, and that is gonna be by pruning them. Pruning strawberries is really easy. How strawberries propagate is they put out what are called runners, and these are kind of similar to suckers on tomato plants. If you want your plant to focus on only the biggest, most delicious berries, you want to prune off those runners because that's just going to take away energy from the plant. And what it's doing is it's just trying to spread. And this is how they become very invasive in the ground, is they put out those runners root, and then those runners put out runners, and then those put out runners, and before you know it, it's like a whole mess. Another way that you can encourage more fruit production over time is you can actually prune off those first few flowers or those first few fruits that it's forming, and that will kind of help those roots establish better and it'll give more berries over time. If your strawberries are getting pests like aphids or spider mites, you want to quickly wash those off with water and maybe start trying to attract some predator insects like ladybugs. You can do that by planting some companion plants either with or next to your strawberries. Some really nice ones are flowers like marigolds or herbs like dill. If you're dealing with slugs or snails, it's best to get those berries up off the ground as high as you possibly can in some elevated containers or like the green stalk. That really helps, and just hand pick them off. Or you can also use beer traps. If birds are trying to steal those precious berries from you, hey, I mean, they're birds, they're just trying to live too. But one thing you can do is you can put protective netting over your strawberries, or what I like to do is I like to feed the birds in my yard. I will just feed them away from the garden, somewhere in the front yard, keep them fat and happy, and they leave my strawberries alone. If you live in a humid environment and your strawberries are being affected by powdery mildew, that's one of the most common things that we have here in North Carolina. That means you want to improve that air circulation. You want to cut off any affected leaves and cut off old leaves. Just make sure that there's lots of circulation going on with your plants. If you're getting small, really funky, misshapen fruit, most likely the culprit here is improper pollination. So you will want to attract pollinators by planting flowers, or it could also be a fertilization issue. You might be having too much nitrogen, and you can adjust by adding a little bit more phosphorus.
Thanks to Meg, you now have the complete guide on how to make strawberries work for you in a container. We've also done a killer blueberry in containers guide with Meg you can check out right here. Until next time, guys, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.